All right, we are back with part two. In fact, I was joking with Kenny earlier while chatting on WhatsApp about doing a two-part episode, and it was just a joke, and now it actually has become a real thing because of this disruption from Richie. He's feeling under the weather, and it's accompanied by our weaning him off of nipples and bottles.
Okay.
So we know that it's going to be a rough weekend, but we kind of outlined this 3-day weekend as the best time to do so. So, um,
Respect. And with your comment earlier about how adaptable humans are, I have full trust that he's going to be weaned off within a week.
exactly, and that's the whole thing that the pediatrician was saying at his 18th month visit, where it's going to be harder the longer you go with these weaning types of behaviors. So, do it now uh, and get it over with.
Yeah.
So.
Deal with the trauma now.
Yeah, so I think we were kind of on this idea of honesty, which I think is a great attribute, to be honest. And it's one thing to be honest with other people, and it's another thing to be honest with yourself. And like, um, I don't know. I want to get into kind of these personality types because it's something that I remember talking about when having the conversation about doing this podcast actually at
Hmm.
Rafa's a summer ago, and we were having this big conversation about taking the personality tests and seeing who you are, and kind of mm, having more of a context in terms of knowing yourself and knowing what you can work on and what you can appreciate as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you had said that you are. I don't. The four-letter acronyms are always kind of tough for me. I know it begins with an I.
Yes. Well, there's various ways to measure personality.
Right.
Um, there's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. There's something called socionics, which I'm mm, learning more about recently, which I find pretty intriguing so far. There's the Big Five indicator, which measures openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, assertiveness, and the N I can't remember. It's ocean is the acronym. Narcissism? No, it's not. I forget the N.
Yeah.
But in the Myers Briggs, I am pretty positive I am an INTP. I
And
don't
this
know if
is
that
there's 16 personality types, right?
in the Myers Briggs system, there's 16 personalities types. Yep. And the dichotomies are E or I, extroversion or introversion. There's S or N, sensing or intuitive. There is T or F, thinking or feeling. And there is J or P, which is judging or perceiving. Each of those means something, but within each of the
Right.
16 types, the cognitive functions are basically what you should look at, and those vary. So, if I'm saying this correctly, I believe I am an introverted thinker, extroverted intuitive, introverted sensor, and extroverted feeler.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then the further you go down in the cognitive functions, the weaker they are. So my primary strength, my default is introverted thinking. Um, and I'm an intuitive leading personality, which is more rare than sensing.
Hmm.
And
Sensing is more, I guess, a follower, somebody who looks for a leader. No?
sensors just tend to see things more as they are. Intuitives tend to see more between the lines, but everyone, it's important to remember that there's not one that's better than the other. It's uh, everyone's on a spectrum. So if you do the Myers-Briggs personal MBTI, they call it for short, it'll measure how extroverted or introverted you are. Everyone's a bit of both of the dichotomies.
Right.
So I'm much more introverted, believe it or not. I would assume that a lot of you guys who might listen to this, who play soccer with me, probably don't think I'm an introvert because I yell a lot on the field, but that's not my personality. Just there's a switch that happens when I play.
Right. I mean, it's kind of your performance space in a way. In a similar way as like on the touchline as a coach, you're going to be vocal, right?
I'd rather the players talk, but if they're not doing it, and oftentimes they're not doing it enough to my liking, I start to yell and
Do it for them.
yeah, and I don't necessarily like it, but I feel like I need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of, I feel, you have called me Kenneral Chasm before. I feel like one of my strengths is, or my primary strength is like, I know the game and I will like dictate things. I'm not necessarily a great player in any regard. I just, I'm a leader, and I'm not typically a leader in most areas of my life. But when I'm really passionate about something, I feel like if no one takes the reins, I just have to grab them and have. I like to have control over of things, not over people, not over relationships, but when it's something like soccer or something I care about, I feel like I need to. If no one's going to care, I have to care. I have to do the work, even though it's not my title or my position. Just want to try to do the right thing, but we were talking about personality.
That reminds me of an SEL, a socio-emotional learning lesson that was being played out in the 6th grade today. I push in on Mondays and Fridays to the grade level classes and help out with these social emotional lessons. And this one was all about upstanding citizens and like involving yourself when you feel like something should be done, but no one else is doing it. And, that's a very rare quality for somebody to speak up when nobody else is speaking up and to put the spotlight on themselves when they don't need to, right? For a cause that could be very highly criticized. Not to say that's exactly what you're saying, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of that. Like if no one's going to do it, you're going to do it.
Yeah, the story of somebody, anybody, nobody. I forget the title of the story. I can read it real quick if you'd like.
Is it a Dr. Seuss story?
Well, I read this to my kids, and Coach Bishop knows this. Coach Moravietz, they know this, but
yeah, please do. I don't think I know this story.
I always have to read it because it's a silly story.
You know what? I'm gonna get a poem. Well, you're getting that. You got it up already?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna read it really fast.
Okay.
The story is titled, "Whose Job Is It Anyway?" This is a story about 4 people named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have. The story may be confusing, but the message is clear. No one took responsibility, so nothing got accomplished. It's a story that plays out often in organizations, companies, teams, anywhere there is a culture that lacks accountability. So sometimes I do have the mentality of, is it my job? Is it my title? Is it my place? And if the end result may be dire to my survival, let's say someone being robbed at gunpoint on a train, I might think twice about doing the right thing for my own survival's sake. But it's something a little bit simpler like soccer. I don't mind being that asshole who has to yell. I don't like it. I don't want the spotlight on me. And I had reservations about doing this podcast because I don't like to have people look at me and judge me and focus on me. But again, I'm working on my weaknesses.
And I can tell you right now, there's going to be a lot of negative commentary in that YouTube video.
Turn those comments off.
I don't know if the comments are on or off. I don't feel like there's been a comment yet, but
I've liked every video, but video I haven't commented though.
Oh, that's you, is it? Okay. Who else are the other two likes?
I don't
Who's
know, but
doing that out there?
there's some good views. I think Boris has the most views, if I'm not mistaken.
There's probably a translated version out there somewhere. It's making its rounds in Buenos
Argentina.
Aires right now,
Yeah.
in Salta.
He's got
Uh,
that handsome face and good podcast voice.
and then there's the exoticism that it's like taking place in the U.S. and everyone in Argentina is like, "Oh, Messi's there now! Like, what are they talking about in the U.S.?" And every sentence they're anticipating a mention of Messi.
You know.
But um, yeah, the what what are you saying here about the accountability? About
Oh, the anybody somebody
yeah, well,
nobody.
and then also just kind of putting yourself out there. I had a thread that I can't grab back onto. Oh no, that's
You
what's
were gonna
happened.
read a poem, I thought.
Oh, that was kind of a different. This poem actually came to mind because in build up to like having these sit downs with people, I kind of think about what the essence of somebody is, and with Jez, I felt like there were some missed opportunities there where I think after the fact of like, I wish I would have like zoned in on that because I think he's really unique in this way or whatnot. But
It's
I
not too
remember
late.
it's not too late. There's always a second part available, but there's a there was a poem for a while. I was like really learning and learning poetry, and I would just memorize a lot of poems. And there was one that I really liked about a thread, and it was about this thread you follow, and it's difficult to determine or to express why you're following this thread, but you must always believe in that thread, and that this thread is just your guide. And it's a poem that spoke to me, and I thought like as somebody who is very honest with yourself and with other people, as I feel you are, um, that you have this belief, you have this core value system, because I think that that's what the poem is about. Essentially, it's about a thread that you're following that nobody else understands, but only you are, um, and you kind of stick to this life standard or something. Um, and this has no question at the end of it. That's all. It was just a it was a
You
comment and less
you're
a
saying
question.
I have that?
Yeah, I feel like you have a thread. Is there something? What's your driving force, do you feel? I guess.
Uh,
With,
well, when you were saying that, I thought my obviously over time my philosophy changes a bit, but I've always kind of been, if I'm going to label it, a little bit of a stoic, the stoic philosophy.
who are your idols then? Who are your role models in that way?
Role models. Well, in the stoic way,
Well,
like,
I guess you can break up role models in terms of people who you actually know who have been an influence in your life, and then people who actually you just admire in a grander sense. Like,
well, I admire a lot of people. I admire you. I admire a lot of the footy fellas. Probably all of them in their own way. I I admire people who are thoughtful, conscientious, not in a I want to please everybody way, but at least consider other people's existence, wants, needs. Um, I respect people who take care of their stuff, who take care of their family, um, who are open to learning and open to modifying who they are. I guess personally, I live my life kind of by systems of or procedures. I'm very uh, I have systems for a lot of my actions and my thoughts, and but they change. If someone gives me another perspective and I value it and I see utility in my life, I may modify my current system of how I do something or think because they've brought something uh, to make me think in a different way. And
Right.
I see a lot of things as lessons. The initial response to something negative might be a negative feeling, but how can I learn a lesson from it? How can I see that negative thing in a positive way? Because I believe that living in with a victim mentality, like everything and everyone and things happen to me. Uh, why is this always happening to me? That's no way to live. Um, so even if it is the case that someone's out to get you, which is, I can't, hopefully that's not happening to you guys, but uh, you, it's healthy to not frame it in that way, even if that may be partly true. It's
Right.
not healthy to believe that that's true because uh, I'm not saying go against reality. I'm saying your mindset has to be somewhat so that you can continue through the hard things, through the hurdles in life. So controlling your attitude and effort, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. And I'm certainly not as good as I can be, but that's kind
I,
of how I think.
I think what you were talking earlier about like thoughtfulness is what you appreciate, and I think uh, that sort of exemplifies what I see as your essence, and this is just from my point of view, and you can tell me whether you're wrong. But I think that's a commonality that you and I have, where it's tough too in the world that we live in a very capitalistic world where you are kind of you are what's it called controlled what's it called oh my gosh, this word is like, it always bothers me trying to think of this word. You're conditioned, that's the word. You're conditioned to like believe that more is better, and that you are always striving for something that is quantitatively greater or qualitatively greater, and it's just not attainable. And like the things that matter are the things that you put thought and energy and love into, and they're things that other people put thought and energy and love into, and these are like the systems that we create as humankind. And it's really hard to make sense sometimes of life when you are living in a society that doesn't value those things, or that is not to say that individuals don't, because I think there's so much hope in individuals, but when you see, commercials and media and all the corporations aiming for one thing, and all of even the trends, like I think the ugliest thing that the thing that gives me so much heartache and uh, just disgust is like predatory knowledge of like gaining the upper hand of people in ways that are intellectual, of like taking micro doses because you're trying to get the upper edge of this, like keeping up with the Joneses, but then it's playing into like you need to know everything that's up to date in intellectual world and psychology, and it's like you're trying to play this wisdom game, but you are totally missing the whole boat of what wisdom actually is. You're doing it for a capitalistic or predatory purpose. And like that is the saddest thing ever to me. And I mean, like, if you want to say why I have such a disgust or distaste of California, like that is it in a nutshell of of this hyper predatory progression of our individualistic goals and achievements. And I don't know. I think that we're going very separate. Maybe I'm just on a diatribe of unthoughtfulness, but
I have much to say about what you just said. I'll start with the California part. I visited, but mostly just Southern California. And I had that same feeling where it seems that people are more concerned about what you have than who you are. And I don't, that's probably not that accurate in terms of a whole, but I think that yes, we live in this capitalistic society where we're always being told that we need more, that this thing's going to make you happy, that this service is going to make your life easier. And people are always, they're not willing to work on themselves and their thought and their competence to actually accomplish those things without the service or the good, the product. I think humans want answers to things, to difficult problems, and we tend to oversimplify things, which makes things more like black and white, and it takes the nuance out because we want to get to the answer. We want to get to the solution. But oftentimes there is no easy answer or easy route. You just have to do the work. And the work that you do to get to a goal that's kind of what it's daunting for people. But when you get through it, you get to your goal and you look back on what you've gone through. You should be proud about the hours and the commitment you put in to get to that goal without having to buy the product that got you there or the service that got you there.
Or without having to document it, I might add, where it's like, I think that documentation really sort of nullifies like
The
the
authenticity.
meaningful is the authenticity, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a big social media guy. I have done my posts in the past, and I'm not, I can't lie and say that in the past, if I posted something and I got some likes or comments, I wasn't a little bit like, ooh,
Right.
dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
but I'm way past that now, and
Yeah,
I
it's a bit
do.
odd, in tying this all back together with what we were just saying in personality, like you have to all then step back and say like, well, is there a personality type that just interprets all of this differently and has a totally different reaction to the social media and to sharing of knowledge and to like competition or whatever it might be, and it's just like seen through this healthier, cleaner lens, which I just don't I just can't find myself to, or can't get myself um to accept. I don't know, in a way where, and then this is a type of thing where it's like I keep this is sort of my privateness, where these things rarely come out in conversation with me, how passionately I feel about my way of living, or the standards I keep myself to,
Yeah. Uh, you mentioned personality types, and there's varying degrees of maturity or lack thereof within a personality type. And cognitive functions basically dictate how you think and perceive. So there can be an immature INTP, like,
Mm,
uh-oh,
right.
I think I lost you.
Oh yeah, I still got you.
Okay, cool.
You?
I'm
Okay.
back. Yeah. Um, people's experience throughout life and what they go through dictate um, how do I say this? There are certain types, let's say more feeling types and more sensing types, that might be more inclined to keep up with the Joneses, or um, feel bad that they may have criticized someone because they want to be liked.
Hmm.
Um, but there's other types who don't really care what people think of them. They don't. Feeling isn't high in their cognitive function stack, so it seems like they're jerks. Like, I would assume that some people are very annoyed by me and my criticisms, or my truths. But what I would like people to know is that if I'm criticizing you, I care about you, and I might be wrong in my criticism, but it's coming from a place of positive intent. Um, personality in terms of like how you live your life, it does change. Different personalities perceive and think differently, therefore they act differently. Um, but people with, let's say, their fourth cognitive function, which is weak for me, is my feeling function. So you don't see a lot of emotion from me. You don't see, I'm not rainbows and butterflies, but deep down I have strong feelings. I just don't feel. My type is that I don't show them. They're not for the public. They're for me, and sometimes they come out. And when they come out, they're pretty extreme. But it's like I subconsciously repress them and keep them inside, and that's just my type. Um,
Do you what was I going to say? Do you feel I lost it, man? You
yeah,
know what
you
I
were on a topic too, and I was trying to piggyback off that, but I failed.
the wandering conversation of Richard and Kenny. Um, you know what? One thing though, I was thinking about earlier, and this was my brain fart that I couldn't overcome, was you talking about how kids are extremely self-conscious, right? And that when you're that upstanding citizen, sometimes you have to kind of put yourself out there in a way that puts a spotlight on you. And I think that that's an aspect maybe that we both share is like I am loving getting older. Like getting older is only going to get better. I feel like I actually do really love feeling what I'm feeling and learning from my experiences. And one reason is because I was so self-conscious as a kid. I hated putting myself out there. There was so much anxiety, and now I feel like I just kind of don't care. And um, the freedom of that is just does wonders for my stress levels and my anxiety and all this stuff.
Yeah, and it could be a good example for your kids too. If you can be your authentic self in a public setting, that might give them some courage to do it themselves. Um, I'm the same way. As I've gotten older, I've become more comfortable with myself, and things I used to judge negatively, I can now accept that part of me likes that. I don't want to, I'm not that contrarian that I used to be that, oh, if it's popular, fuck that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm cooler than that. I now will sing with my windows down, or, um, you know, I'll walk through the halls at school humming a tune or whistling, or I, there is some sort of a comfort of getting older and learning who you are, accepting who you are, and not being self-conscious about what you're passionate about, because the cliche saying life's too short, and as you get older and that the
Hourglass.
sand, yeah, the hourglass star, thank you, the hourglass, we have less years ahead of us the longer we live, and I think you start to realize that it doesn't, I don't give a fuck who are they to, I don't care what they think. I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what I care about. I'm doing what I think is right. And
But like on the other side of the coin is, we have this reputation of becoming sort of stubborn old men who are stuck in their ways, right? So I think there is this recognition of like you don't want to become somebody who is so comfortable in yourself that you discount like the ability to empathize with people of different statuses or different situations than you. Um, and I do think there is like I don't know. I I do sometimes check myself when I'm like, okay, am I who I want to be, or am I becoming the person that is the most relaxed? And maybe the most relaxed form of myself isn't like the person have most respect for, kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that both of us are open enough to realize that, yes, we might start to get set in our ways, but we're open-minded enough to realize that new ideas could infiltrate our mindset, and we can adapt our thoughts based on this new knowledge. Kind of like what I said earlier, I might seem stubborn in ways, but if you can present me a good reason to modify my thought or my system of doing something, I'm going to listen. Uh, I'm going to change. But if what you tell me is I don't see any value in, I might just stay the same. Um,
I'm gonna I'm gonna attempt a complete 180 in topic and theme here.
Shift the gear, baby.
Shift the gear. We're going in reverse. We're going down a different street.
I'm scared.
Um,
I'm scared.
what street are we going down? We're going down
A one way, the wrong
Germany.
way.
We're gonna go down Germany 2006 because I didn't wear this team. What is
Australia.
this? No, it's not. It's South Africa.
South
And
Africa. Okay.
there were two inspirations in the choice of this jersey. One was Jez's mention of Sydney last
Yeah.
week, and the second one is that I'm talking to you, and something that we didn't learn until years of being friends is that we were both in Germany during the World Cup in 2006, both extremely impressionable trips on our beings. These American kids being exposed to the greater European extravagance and cultivation of culture.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't cross paths. I mean, we didn't know each other, but who knows? Maybe we
Maybe
were
we
on the
did.
same train at one time. I went to the Nuremberg Ghana USA
I
game,
was at that game.
which is insane because I was passed out in the train station of Nuremberg
I
after
was
the
passed out on a different station on a different day, but not that.
no, but I think I mean so part of this SEL lesson today was actually creating neural pathways in your mind by exposing yourself to new things and opening up and broadening your understanding of your existence. And I think that trip that I took, was that your first trip abroad?
What sort of trip are we talking about?
Was
Um,
the 2006 trip to the
that
World
was
Cup, was
my
that
second trip abroad.
Oh, okay, that was your second trip.
Yeah.
Okay, but still very early on in the globe trotting days.
Yes. Um, my first my first international trip was '03 or '04. My friend Mike Petrielli, who played on the Korean soccer team with me as the goalie, we were high school friends, college friends, and we're still really good friends. He lives in California now, but he was studying in Canterbury, England, which is not far from where Jez grew up. And me and my friend Mike Simzak, who also lives in California now, we had just got done with a court case. We had a friend who got us in trouble. And after, I'm not going to go through all the details, after a long time of going to court and them thinking Mike and I were guilty, they finally found out that it was actually our friend who was the culprit in this, and we just happened to be there. We still had to serve a year of supervision and community service. At the end of the year of supervision community service, we decided to book a trip to England to visit Mike Petrielli. And it was my first time in England. I had all these preconceived notions. It was great.
And you're already like 5 years an Arsenal fan, so you have
Yeah, yeah.
right.
We flew to London, British Airways. We got tickets for like $330 round trip. I remember the flight was great. We were 20, I believe, and we were drinking Stella Artois on the plane for
Yeah,
free.
what is 2019 the drinking age in England?
I think it's 18.
18. Okay.
Yeah. So they didn't even card us on the plane once we were in international waters. You know, the stewardess had British accents. We're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Can we have a beer? And oh yeah. All right. So we had like 6 or 7 beers and a bottle of wine and
This is long-haired Kenny, right?
yeah, longer hair, yeah.
No, very few of us know long-haired Kenny.
I'll bust out pictures sometime, but uh, we landed in London. Petrielli was there, and some of his friends that he met in Canterbury, who were from America, came with him, and I met all these people that he was friends with as he got us from the airport. We took a train to Piccadilly Circus to stay at this hotel. Put our bags away. We started walking around London, and we saw this sign outside of a currency exchange. It said "Magic mushrooms sold here." So I looked at Mike. I'm like, what's this? And he's like, yeah, they're legal. So my first day in a foreign country, we purchased these magic mushrooms, and we went to a restaurant called Tiger, I believe.
Thai
And
restaurant?
no, we got burgers, so I don't think so. Put these mushrooms on our burgers and ate them, and they were fresh, they were wet, and I had never had experience with wet magic mushrooms. I had maybe taken them one other time, but they were dry. So I didn't know how much to take. And me, Mike, and this kid, Dave Caldera, who I met just then, we took them, and the group of people who didn't take them kind of went their own way. And me, Mike, and Dave found ourselves in Chinatown of London, and there was a street performer. I remember just being amazed. He had these 2 sticks with a string and like an hourglass shaped looking thing, and he's like tossing it up and doing all these tricks, and all 3 of us are just amazed. And we walked around, and it was my first time in a foreign country, and I was under the influence, and it was just surreal.
All right.
That was yeah, we spent some time in London and some time in Canterbury. That was my first trip abroad. And then a few years later, during the 2002 World Cup, me and my friends would stay up late to watch because it was in Korea and Japan. And Petrielli, Petrielli is a globetrotter. He's still a single guy. He travels a lot for work still. I credit him for him and soccer for
broadening your world, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So would joke while we were watching the 02 World Cup, we're all gonna go to the 06 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And then 05 rolls around, he calls me up. I was at ISU at the time, and he said, what's your credit card number? I'm buying tickets right now. So I just gave it to him, and we flew Air India to England first, and we made our way through Europe and went to the USA group stage games. And so you and I were
that was Italy. That was Italy, Croatia,
Czech Republic, USA,
Czech Republic, right.
In
Czech Republic first. That was the first match.
Then USA, Italy, Kaiserslautern.
Rosicky hit that screamer, right?
Yep, and he was a fresh Arsenal player.
Right. Oh, he was on Arsenal at that time?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I thought that was his first season at Arsenal.
Really? Oh, I would have thought that the World Cup stage propelled him to that contract.
I might be wrong. I'm kind of old, but I think he was already at Arsenal.
Okay.
I can do a little research, but I'm not going to make any dead time on this already.
People joke about Thomas Rosicky being Sid from Toy Story, right?
Oh, when you said Sid, I was thinking sudden infant death.
Oh, geez.
But
hey,
that would make any sense.
Kenny, I have a monitor right here. What a cruel joke that is.
Well, I mean, he's not an infant, as you stated earlier. He's a toddler. Get it right.
He very much is. This kid's drop kicking balls at this point.
Is he intimidating you yet?
Oh God, he's far beyond when I was at that age. It's this Montessori principle. He just has the world to himself. The world's his oyster. I didn't have that as a kid. I was constrained in small spaces. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
he might be an INTP.
He's just, if we can only hope, we can only hope. No, he's just a normal ass kid. I love. I remember Boris joking like about having kids one day. No one ever says, I just want my kid to be fucking normal. I don't.
I mean, that's a blessing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you think about it too. It's just like the normal kids are pretty much the happiest kids. Everyone else has a complex. Like, you just want a kid who's just fucking run of the mill, has
Right.
friends, you know, has insecurities, whatever.
A boring life's not always bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's relative. It's relative. But
So,
I'm looking forward to seeing him on Sunday for the big match.
well, I will say, okay, so we're 2 hours in, but this is a two-parter now. So we got like, I'm feeling like we have like 20 minutes if you're okay with it. I don't know, because
I'm here.
I feel like this is the ultimate long form conversation where I'm in my second beer. Delirium's 8.5%.
Oh
They're
shit.
they're 20-ounce bottles or cans. So
Well, I
I
have to drive over and stop the recording once you pass out. Call
and
Anna and let her know.
take care of Richie too. He needs to be pat on the butt pretty firmly, and that's what helps him go back to sleep. But no, so you went to all three group stage games?
No.
Damn.
Well, yeah.
Did you travel exclusively in Germany?
No, we started in England. We flew Air
Okay.
India to London, spent some time there before the World Cup started. Then we took the channel to Belgium. Then we went up to Holland, stayed a little bit in the red light district of Amsterdam.
Sure.
Uh, I watched, I think it was the first day of games. I think it was England, Uruguay. Um, I remember nothing but Heineken on tap in a lot of bars. And I remember purchasing marijuana legally and rolling it in the pub. And it, I was, it's normal now. It's,
Sure. But at the
but
time, I mean, it was so,
yeah, I'm like looking over. Is
dude.
anybody looking at us? Like, is this okay to do? And it's completely normal.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about even like my son and think about like, okay, if he can have experiences like that, all the angst and all the self-consciousness, like it's all worth it because like those years of just expanse of understanding that this world is greater and that the possibilities are limitless. Those were the most beautiful years, and I hope there's some sort of like ability to recreate what I felt in those experiences because like man, I remember for years after that 3 week 3 week or 2 week, I can't remember what it was now, but like I remember for about 6 years following the fact, I could remember every single day and the agenda of every single day. Like that's how much it meant to me.
Yeah.
And it was just like this incredibly special time. Um, like so many just incredible associations and you think I yeah, I think about things like where it's how my identity just changed so dramatically, and that's what allowed me the confidence to think that I could travel to Asia and be okay and make friends that were not American and be okay. And it's just like, and I think sometimes you do have to have these ins like this Pirelli. Is that
Petrielli.
Petrielli?
Yeah.
I think about the guys who were my in, who it's like I recognize they were my key to a greater world.
Yeah.
And you need that because where else? How do you just like go? You
Yeah.
know?
Being more of an introverted person, I think that it's good to have those people as like a social buffer, as like a hey, like come with me, and then they allow you some confidence to open up.
Hmm.
But in terms of what you're saying about Richie, it's you hope that he has the opportunity to experience things, test the boundaries,
Yeah.
and they're going to the old stubborn guy talk. Um, the further we get from face to face conversation, the more AI we get, the more digital lives we live. I would say that uh, the less human interaction we have, those boundaries aren't really. You're not really testing boundaries because it's all super safe. You know,
Right.
the anonymity of commenting online, or like I can swear at you now and you can't punch me in the face because this is just a screen. Um, I think that there's something that might be a little bit scary for kids now and kids in the future, where they won't get to experience what we did. But on the flip side, we have to remember that our parents also experienced things that we uh, will didn't or will never be able to, like
Mm.
8-track. It's a bad example, but uh,
Like
is it
toaster ovens.
right? Yeah, like human interaction. We're social beings, whether we're introverted or extroverted. We're social beings, and we need touch and we need connection and belonging. Can we get that fully from the digital experience? A
Well,
lot of signs are pointing to no, but
no, and I agree, but I think there is this theme of, and I'm sure you've seen it a little bit in like witnessing maybe a half generation or a full generation uh, shift in the time that you've been in schools. Like there's still the same. It's always the same. It just looks different, right?
mhm,
So it's
people
like
are people.
people are people. You're always you're having the same emotional journey, but it's just in a different context.
Hmm.
And so it's like whether I'm in Europe and I'm smoking a cigarette or I'm in the red light district, like there's going to be a similar experience available to an individual in the new modern world, right?
Right.
And it's going to look different, but it doesn't. You can't discount uh, the gravity of that experience. And I think in that way too, it's like sometimes you come back from journeys abroad or living abroad, and it's difficult not to feel this sense of superiority of exposure, where you feel like I know things now that these people don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but the fact is, like, everybody's living 24/7, 365. Like, they are also experiencing things in their own way that are as meaningful and relevant to their growth as you did. It's just such a different framework, right?
Right.
And I think, like, and then in that way, it's like I think about raising a kid in the city where it's like, geez, can I imagine being a high schooler in Chicago? I cannot. So foreign from anything I ever knew.
Yeah.
Is it better or worse? As you're saying, like a lot of times we have this tendency to frame things as better or worse. It's just not. It's just different. And
You only know what you know.
yeah, and
And yeah, it's I totally agree. The tools change as times change, and the Zeitgeist
right,
changes, to use
right,
some
yeah.
German.
That means time ghost for everybody who doesn't know what a direct translation.
Thank you. I didn't know what that meant. Um, I mean, I know contextually what it means, but not direct translation. Like you have said,
I was, gonna- I was
you
going to say this is the 10
it's not a
second.
lag. I'm not lagging. I'm just thinking. um,
This is where Frankie turns it on 1.5 times speed. It's like I can't handle it anymore.
I like that you are defending a defensive for like someone like Tom, who's a millennial. I think a lot of people poke fun. I don't think a lot of people actually think like the stubborn old man uh,
Yeah.
stereotype. Uh, myself uh, included, I would say that I do reckon, like how I had said earlier, I always kind of fantasize about living in different times and how it might change, and how it might, what I might be like, and ultimately people are people, and we all have that survival instinct and that need to belong. It's just the things around us change. So Richie growing up in a city it's going to be different from you growing up in more sort of rural California. But the themes of belonging and finding yourself and uh, being romantically interested in the other sex or the same whatever, it's like a
Hey,
new.
are you calling my son gay?
He might be, who knows. I'll test him soon. I'm going to do a little gay test on him. But what if he's trans?
Is that like allergy test on the back? You put like different.
No, it's just a nasal swab.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that what COVID testing really is all about? It's just whether you're gay or not.
right. Yeah, I got a result. I didn't want to share it with anyone. But yeah, I mean, though our education and our information and our knowledge might be greater because we have access to more things now, um, people are ultimately people, right?
Right. I think I have such a admiration for people who are really into sci-fi for that reason. Like sci-fi has never really appealed to me, but I realize these forward thinkers, you are thinking in such a non judgmental way about the way that we could live, and like such an optimistic way. I almost feel to even imagine like human experience in a different um, like digital or whatever extraterrestrial context. And I want to be more like that, where it's like I want to be more forward thinking and not just like next year, a couple of years. Like I want to think about in 30 years. And it's so rare that I think in that space, but um, I think it's really cool when people have this belief that humankind's going to transpire, or it's going to retain existence, and like we're going to find a way, and there's this spirit and there's these continual narratives that are always going to be eternal, and like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is pretty cool.
Hmm.
uh, because I think I am a little bit more of the tendency to think that the past is always more meaningful, or more like the tangible things are, or the analog things are preferred. And
Well, there's a chance that we may go back to more
right, yeah,
analog things if we recognize that technology might be affecting us negatively. But I think traveling also allows us to see how different cultures live, and puts things into perspective and makes us wonder, like, why don't we do what they do here? And systems of thought and ways of living, there's no right way, but we I think a lot of people tend to criticize how people live or how people think, um, in a way that they think that they're right, like there's a
right.
certain way to live. um, but I think that's just kind of a closed-minded approach.
Yeah, that's definitely my biggest fascination is intercultural interaction, and like just the different ways that you can make sense of your environment based on your resources, and uh, cultural mm, cultural intelligences and everything. And it's amazing. Like humans are such fascinating species, right? And I mean, I think sometimes to have that gratitude that you are of humankind, and to like appreciate us, is something really meaningful. And I think sometimes I make this reference to like the moon landing, where like conspiracies surrounding the moon landing should be almost considered offensive to humankind, because if you are a scientist, if you are in mathematics, like that whole venture in making a rocket ship, in sending it into space, in getting it to land on the moon, it took so many man hours of hard work and building off of the predecessors of of experience and information and knowledge. Like, it is the grand achievement of humankind. And for that to be dismissed is a recognition of ignorance, in my opinion. It's somebody not understanding how brilliant we are as humans and how much output we have created. And it's and similarly, like, even, cultures that are as not, in a global sense, like third world countries, the systems they have in place are built off of centuries of trial and error and figuring it out and insight, and it's just like what we are is amazing.
Yes. Uh, that pretty much relates to what I was saying earlier about mindset. It's easy to destroy, it's hard to create.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
you don't have an appreciation for creation or ideas or things that aid humankind, you need to rethink your existence, because if you take everything for granted, like this beer here, I right now I would have no idea how to make this.
Right.
To a certain extent, I take it for granted. I just go to the store and buy it,
Right.
and the meat and the vegetables. If you really think about it, we the running water, the showers, the heat in the house, the lights, the electricity, what we're doing now, fucking amazing. And so many people take it for granted. I'm not sure how much people think about these things, but the fact that we wait in lines pretty much cordially, and we don't kill each other or choke each other
Right.
out.
Right.
Sometimes people do, on Black Friday in Walmart for that new PlayStation 5. But on a whole, most people have been socialized to um, not be wild animals.
Right.
Ultimately, we're biological beings who used to be tribal and feuding, and to an extent we still are, but more a minor scale. Um, so yeah, I mean, I am a cynical guy in a way, but I am certainly appreciative of the the creations, the inventions, the thoughts. Like when you were explaining the moon landing, I had thought of the atomic bomb. To make that such a powerful thing at that time in history, uh, a lot of some European scientists came here to create something to stop the world war in which they had escaped. Um, it was such an ugly thing for humanity, but at the same time, such an amazing thing that was created by humans.
Yeah, which is kind of something that I think we come back to with like modern invention, where people have positive intentions for their creations, but the inevitability of the creation is going to be abuse, and it's going to lead to um, exploitation or tragedy, really. I
Human
mean,
error, really, human
right.
selfishness,
You
and
think
and
about like Google, as much as in the early years they said they are not evil, like inevitably Google is going to be evil because of the business that they do.
yeah, uh, humans use these tools. I always use social media as an example because that seems to be a relevant thing. Some people think social media is super bad. Something it's so awesome. It's how you use it, really. I mean, we're using it as a connection to each other, and maybe as an entertainment for whoever's watching. But then some people use it to slander and
Hmm.
um, be predators. What would be the term? Predate. um, it's
I think pray.
pray, pray. Thank you. Can you edit that out? Um, uh, ultimately it always comes down to the individual and how they think, how they see things, how they use things, their intent.
Right.
Um,
I mean, you hear again and again, it's like social media is a tool. The tool is how you do use the tool. And
right.
by extension, you might say social media is a powerful tool or a dangerous tool. How do you use the dangerous tool? Because I mean, you could think of a knife. Like a knife can be used to cut things. It
Yeah.
could be used to slice your tomato, or it could be used to kill your neighbor. And
Right.
like, and so it's a powerful tool. And if and as humanity, I mean, it's like it's very difficult to educate every single individual on how to apply a powerful tool in a in an ethical way.
And not
And
every individual is capable of even getting to that point of understanding what's good and bad. And that's
right,
just a reality we have to live with.
right,
Um, and we could talk about the gun debate of should we keep them legal or should we take them away? Ultimately, the gun, the creation of man, that is an amazing thing, but that thing, it could be used for, let's say, hunting and sustenance for survival, but it could also be used for killing fellow man.
right.
Um, it's not the gun that's bad; it's the user of the tool. Again, always back to the individual.
Right. I want to make a reference to the celebration of human culture and systems. I always remember when this is something Jonah told me. It's just like the American public education system. It's like the fact that we have a system and we pay tax money to send children to school to be educated, and we have these teachers who have all these different subjects. Like that is an incredible system we have in place, and we
Network, yeah.
cannot take it for granted. Like the moment we take it for granted is just the moment we show our ignorance. Like um,
Yeah, we're allowed to criticize and think of how it can be better, but think about a world without
right,
schools. A world like
exactly.
who was uh, who was the first person to eat something to find out it was poisonous, and then that knowledge is passed down throughout humanity. That's such. It's like that person died,
Mhm.
but the people who lived on shared that knowledge, and it became common knowledge, and we take that for granted.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's just like this level of abstraction where the less analog we become, the more difficult it is to even imagine how it came into being, sort of thing. And then you just live in this sort of I don't almost like a
Google told me so.
yeah, or like what's that called? And in video game worlds, you're living in man, this is where I really need to brush up on my technology base.
Cyberspace.
Or a simulation. You're like living in a
Simulation.
simulation where it's like you don't have any grasp of this coming into being. It's you're just a player in this world, you
Yeah.
know?
Or true consequence.
Right. Um, I was going to say something regarding public education. I can't remember now. Give me a second. You talk about sidekicks now while I think about this last thing I was going to say, and
Side.
what a special place sidekicks has in your heart, and specifically this establishment over the former establishment that I'm not going to talk about, that we created a serious divide with about 7 years ago based on their extreme inequality of allowance of song of
and
double songing in one night.
I would say true misogyny by the MC. Who's gonna
Thank you.
take this girl home tonight? Shit like that.
Terrible.
Um, I'm not offended, but uh, it's not a good look. Sidekicks. What do I have to? I mean, I love the place. I love the decor. It doesn't intimidate me whatsoever. It's just my sort of dive bar. I my grandma knows a lady outside of Vegas. My grandma lives outside of Vegas. My one grandma left, and my grandpa, when he was living, was good friends with this lady's husband. My grandpa passed away, and this lady's husband passed away shortly after. So my grandma's still alive, and this lady, we call her Jose.
We're gonna have to put an insert link with like this tree of association.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm not a good storyteller, but long story short, Josephine, aka Jose, she lives outside of Vegas now, but she's from Chicago. And I told her that we go to Sidekicks, and she knows Sidekicks. She used to go there in the 70s and 80s. And the
in
decor
the 70s and 80s, really?
I'm not sure if the 70s, probably the 80s.
Okay, sure. I mean,
I don't remember exactly.
We know the
what she said.
posters in the bathroom are definitely from the 80s. So.
Right, the wood paneling and whatnot. We can only estimate the opening date.
I would date it to the 70s. That would be my guess.
79, maybe.
Yeah.
But she remembers the place well, and she has fond memories of it too. So it's not just us.
Man.
It's not just Boris. But every time Boris texts on a school night, I'm tempted. I'm like, oh God, I want to go. But I'm a responsible guy.
I mean, I don't know what personality type Boris is, but he's one of the most emotionally driven individuals I think I know, in terms of just he knows exactly what he needs to scratch that itch in any moment. So if Sidekicks is calling, he's going to go there, and he's going to let us know that he's touching home base, because sometimes too much time transpires that we haven't visited our good place, our happy place,
If I was less responsible, if I was more extroverted, I would act on his impulsive invites. And Boris, I will tell you that I'm tempted every time. I can't. I need a little bit of a heads up for things.
Dude, that is like one of my main sources of jealousy when he's going and I can't. So I was like, dude, I was joking with him through text today. It's like, is there going to be a time in my life where I don't have to ask permission? Like, there will be once again, but it's going to be a while, I think, till that occurs.
Yeah, and Richie will be tagging along, I'm sure.
Ah, God, what a day that will be where we sing a duet. I should probably start thinking about that now. Don't want that to creep up on me too early.
Yeah, I'll try to think of some good ones.
I still think the whole I'm not gonna start singing right now. The diner one.
You were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I just want to hear your voice pitching in that line, and you just did. You fulfilled.
Did we do that together before?
I feel like we did. Maybe I just wasn't as aware of the song as I am now. But
I remember doing "We Can Work It Out," and we kind of play acted like we were mad at each other, and then we worked it out.
The thing about any performance is it's very much in the moment, and then it dissipates from my mind forever. But God, I mean, I think Sidekicks was like such a essential part for so many years in just getting me through the work weeks and like having something to motivate me for, because I don't know. It is really just like this expressionable outlet. It's just like, there were definitely games where we would lose. The intention prior was to go to Sidekicks, and then that enthusiasm would dissipate, and then I went home, and it was a terrible weekend because I never fulfilled my intention to go to Sidekicks, even though it was like not, I wouldn't explicitly say it because I didn't want to be like a loser, but I hated when I thought I was going to go to Sidekicks, and a loss prevented me from doing so.
And you had your list of songs that you might sing
Oh God!
that
And
you
there were
may
often
have practiced a little bit.
I did practice on the way home from school. I would like replay it on my drive home.
I know the
Those were
feeling.
oh
I know the
God.
feeling.
We take it seriously. And
Yeah, yeah. Um, I like sidekicks because first I love music, and bless you. I think
I don't know what that was, just a cough. But
uh, I'm not big for having conversations over loud music, so a lot of the time I kind of just listen to you guys talk while listening to the music, and like that's enjoyment for me. I don't necessarily want to like yell over the music. It's just like my little comfortable tribe of people that I know with good conversation, and then the good music in the background. Sometimes bad singing, sometimes great singing, but it's like I could tap my foot and play some drums and listen, have some beers after releasing some endorphins after playing, and the weekend is always to follow. So it's always a feel good. I've never left sidekicks feeling bad. Next
yeah,
morning, I can't say I've always felt good, but
no, I think, and that's something that I've been very aware of. It's like, however incredible the Friday is, like nothing for the rest of the weekend can live up to that high. And sometimes I would have like it was almost like creating these unrealistic expectations for the weekend based on my Friday experiences. And I don't know, it's such a strange thing. Like I know Rafa cites like Fridays as being like his just perfect day to play because it allows him to kind of detach from the work week and to just relax. But I grew kind of a complicated relationships with playing on Fridays and then going out on Friday nights because again it would like greatly impact my
parenting.
happiness. No, well, it just hasn't happened that much with parenting, but yeah, it's just too good. Sidekicks is like a drug, and I've been addicted. So
Yeah, and the clientele never seemed to be pretentious. It, yeah, it's just a feel good place. Everyone's they might not be listening to you, but they're supportive of you when you're done, even if you suck. And it's
yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's
it
great.
really is. It's a great thing. What would you sing tonight if you were to go out?
Yeah. Eyes without a face, baby. Billy
Oh,
Idol.
Eyes Without a Face. You guys
Yeah.
didn't see when after the fact of me putting Richie down after a little doses of Motrin, Kenny serrated me with Eyes Without a Face by Billy Idol.
Serrated like a knife. Serenaded.
Serenade.
You're gonna have to listen to the actual version because
It's a
it's much better.
powerful tool, that butter knife.
Cuts bread nicely.
No, I will listen to it. Um, I'm looking at my sad notes,
Right.
and if there's anything we didn't cover.
Let's get back to business after an hour diatribe.
I now see now I'm kind of like stubborn and I just want to make this the longest episode. I almost want to say, "Hey, we're going to stop recording now. I'm going to pee and then we're going to come back for three."
Just do it on air.
And then the next person who's going to be guest, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to ask them, "Did you listen to the full 3 parts of the Kenny episode? Because if you didn't, you're not worth my time and I'm going to find somebody else."
I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get through watching this episode. I'm going to look back and be like, Jesus, need to talk about some more
I think we
exciting
needed
things.
I think we needed one of these though. I'm gonna give you a little window into the wrestling world. And wrestling is very much like the circus, right?
Mhm.
How the circus you want all these variety acts. You want you want the small person, you want the bearded woman, you want the mermaid. You want all these things
Yeah,
and
inclusivity.
inclusive but you're also looking for variety, because then on top of that, you want like the world's whatever it might be. So there's a philosophy in wrestling where on a wrestling card, a 3-hour show, there might be 8 matches. You're trying to give the fans every single type of match that just satisfies every sort of type of audience member. So you're giving like
The
a
underdog winning.
yeah, then you have like a hardcore match, then you have like a classic amateur style wrestling match, and providing the
Midgets.
viewer, yeah,
Sorry,
midgets,
little people.
exactly. And in Lucha Libre, this is a very well recepted received notion of like variety. And um and so I feel like with this podcast, we've had the 1 hour 20-minute format that's
Mm.
kind of been the standard. Like, we should probably start to wrap this up right now. We have the questions about this and that, but this one is just like, this is for a very different palette.
I can't say like I don't like to talk about myself. I don't like to talk about I'm not a good storyteller. I'm more of like a thinker, analyzer. And in the beginning when I was talking about myself, I found I was very bored talking about myself. And and I've had a lot more fun talking about concepts and theories. And
Yeah, which is just such a different roller coaster of like of concentration, because I don't think it is like the two deliriums, although that probably has a little bit of an impact. It is like latching on to these things that you want to progress the conversation with and retaining that idea while still being an active listener. It's really hard, right? Like, and it's, of course, people are going to like relate it to being high or something where it's just like, oh, I can't remember what I was going to say, man. I totally forgot. But it is just a different conversational style. Um,
I think it's that because I'm not I'm not quite sure about what your personality type is, but I would assume that you may be an intuitive sort of leading personality where we can see things from so many different angles that there's not just one thing or two things to say about something, and we can approach things from different angles because we can put ourselves into different perspectives. And I think we both truly think and listen. So like I'll go on a long thing and you want to listen. So when it comes time for you to talk, since you're polite, you'll wait till it's your turn. But you may have forgotten what you wanted to say about something I had said early in my long-winded speech.
right.
At least that's how I feel, because there's
Yeah.
been times where I want to say something, but I can't remember what it was because I was waiting until you're done and I'm really listening to you.
I feel like I may have said this to you before. I feel like I have, but I remember one time my mom. So I have an aunt. So one thing about my family is my dad's side of the family is extremely blue collar. They're from Skokie. That's where the German comes in. My grandfather was a German immigrant. He built his own house,
Mm.
worked. He had 5 children. They're all very much Midwestern and all that sort. My mom's side of the family comes from wealth, and they are also a family of 5, but there's extreme like distress in all of those relationships. There's a lot of greed and mistrust, distrust, and all this sort of stuff. One of my mom's sisters uh, was married maybe 3 different times, and I'll never forget her visiting when I was maybe about 10, 12 years old. And the husband that she was with at that time was just this kind of narcissistic, like charming guy. And I remember my mom, after he had left, after they had ended their visit, she had referenced his conversation style as like, I, I just can't stand him because I can tell whenever I'm saying something, he's already determined what he's going to say next. And it's like he's engaged, but he's actually not engaged because he's like trying to be a good guest, but he doesn't really care what you're saying. He just wants to be charming, you know?
He wants to look like he cares,
He
but
wants to
doesn't
look like,
actually care.
yeah, so you can ask a question, but if that question's not really pertinent to the flow of the conversation, it's really meaningless, and in some cases like almost offensive, right?
Mm.
So that's always stuck with me, because there's been times in my life where it's like, there is that's easy to do, because like it's hard not to have that in your stock, like have that in your back pocket, like I want to ask this, and I want to feel like I'm like pushing along the conversation in a way. But yeah, it's a strange thing. Conversation can take so many different forms, you know.
If you're thinking too much about what you're going to say next, you're not really listening. And why have a conversation then? You know, you
Right.
can. Uh, y- I had a thought when you were saying your dad comes from blue collar, your mom comes from a little more wealth, and you had referenced that your mom's side seemed a little bit more shaky, uh,
Yeah.
unhappy, let's say,
Right, sure.
in terms of
Very less together. We'll just say that.
when you said that, I thought of the stereotype of first world countries like America, Britain, being more unhappy than third world countries on average.
Right,
You've heard that stat, right?
right. More
Can
money,
you
more problems. Yeah.
right? Can you take that concept on a global scale of unhappiness to the familial scale of your mom coming from more affluence, your dad coming from more blue collar? They seemed a little more normal and happy.
Right.
The more affluent seemed a little more turbulent and petty, maybe. I don't. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair term for it. Disconnected or distrustful, as I said. Like it's an interesting dichotomy, and a lot of times these were butted up right next to each other in summer vacationing, where my mom's family was all from Denver, so we'd go on these Denver vacations that felt like cold and distant, and then we go on these Chicago vacations that were like full of fireflies and like fun and just like great warmness. And it's like, as a kid, these are very, very impressionable, where it's like, this is the one that I want to associate with, not that one, right?
So yeah, home is where the heart is, right?
Right.
It's you can have a home full of everything you want, but it's cold and there's no one around, or there's people who just don't care, or you have a shitty little place, let's say like mine, and uh, the feeling's good, and yeah,
Um, uh, man, see, this is where it's like I was gonna say this, but I was listening to, oh, you know what I was gonna say? This is one reason why I'm really missing the three-person format, is because something I had communicated with Boris with, I think prior to the Frankie conversation, was like having one of us be the person who has the questions in reserve in case there is empty space, in case there's like a lull in the conversation, and the other person is purely trying to respond intuitively to the things that the person's saying. And it's almost like, because you want to have in a podcast format, it's like you want things to flow very, very quickly. You don't want there to be dead space. So it's like to have these two people actually almost serving like one individual, can be very beneficial, I feel. So,
so are you saying it's better to have three, you think?
well, I'm saying like well, of course, like if we're just talking, we're not thinking about an audience. We're not thinking about people actually caring about what we're saying.
Right.
However, when you do consider an audience, you do have to say this is somewhat of a performance, right? Or this
Yes.
is somewhat of something that we need to put some thought into. And
Mhm.
the thought was that if I'm the one who has the questions on hand, and Boris is the one that reacts intuitively to the stream of
Exactly.
conversation, the stream of thought, then we can combine those powers to create like a more, continuous
enjoyable
conversation.
experience for the viewers.
Yeah.
I had that thought too. I didn't, I never, there's times where I think it's good to be rehearsed, but I am of the approach that authenticity is the most important thing.
Right.
And if I had the intention to be speaking to a specific audience, that may change how I approach questions. So
Right. Yeah.
what I, even though, I had, like I referenced, I had some reservations about doing this, because I'm not really a spotlight guy. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't too rehearsed I really only took a couple of notes on my college playing, and we've really not talked too much about that, which I'm fine with. Like, I'm not a big talker.
How many
I,
completed passes did you have your junior year?
fuck if I know. Probably a low percentage. I played a lot of defense in college. I played a little midfield, but a lot of defense. Um, but I'm just not interested in talking about myself. Like, I'm happy about the experiences, and the experiences I've gone through are more internalized through like what I've learned, um, how to approach things better through what I've gone through, rather than like I don't remember all the details of my life, because like I'm not looking to build a legacy. I'm more looking for better ways of thought and better ways of approaches to life, to problems, to friendships.
Isn't it sort of like a pursuit of wisdom? And it's not, and I think pursuit almost has a negative connotation. It's almost like you have this gravitation towards understanding that the more you know, the more enriching your life will be. Like,
The less trouble I'll get into, the less I can, more I know, less people can fool me. Um, I won't fall into traps, and it's not like a conscious thing. It's just that's where the personality comes into play. Where I've done enough research and enough reflection to know that I think a certain way, um, and I realize that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not. I'm bored by sensory things. I'm bored by, how's the weather? How was your
yeah,
day? Shit like that just bores the shit out of me. So I
is
don't talk to that many
is
people.
Larry David INTJ or whatever?
Fuck if I know.
Because
I
that's
don't
one
know.
thing. That's one. Have you ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
heard he's a good comedian. I don't really know much about him.
Oh,
He
really?
seems pretty
Yeah.
dry. I'm a dry guy.
Yeah, I grew up watching Seinfeld, and it was like this clear distinction between the Larry David directed seasons and the last two, where everyone was just like paid exorbitant amounts for each episode, and it was Larry David is like the genius behind Seinfeld, and
Okay.
Curb Your Enthusiasm is like the sort of purest form of that sort of humor, and yeah, what Larry David just doesn't give a fuck kind of thing, and um, it's very refreshing in that way.
I give a fuck, but not that much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's things I give a fuck about, and it's I guess generally speaking, it's what most people don't seem to care too much about. Um, I just uh, yeah, I feel like I lose some people sometimes with how I talk, or how I try to express my thoughts, or what my priorities might be in a situation. Uh, it's sometimes I feel a little alienated, a little bit like I want to I want to tell people my thoughts. I want to connect more, but a lot of time it seems futile. So I just kind of
Yeah, I
just
mean,
sit back and stay home. And
I think that's one thing about like I think who was I talking about it with? Maybe Tom, and it came up very briefly in one of the former episodes where it was like the one of the motivations for doing this is to provide a forum for like long format conversation, which you just don't have an opportunity for in most everyday life. Where like I think about I think about two people who I should be friends with, who I should know so well, but I really don't. And that's one is my neighbor. I've never had an actual conversation with my neighbor over 5 minutes. It's always just in passing. And in some ways, I convince myself I want that. I want it that way because I don't want to be too familial with them, uh, because I kind of like that anonymity. The other is one of my colleagues at school, a PE teacher, great guy, like love this guy. And we have conversations in our classroom sometimes, maybe maximum like 20 minutes though. But I've never just gone out and like just shoot the shit with him, just get to know him on like a very, very, personal level because we don't have the time for it. Like he has a family, I have a family. If I It would just be time I don't have reserved for that kind of relationship. And like I think whether it's like the hustle and bustle of the modern world that we live in that doesn't allow for instances of interaction like that, or um, I think that's kind of it. Like sadly, like maybe podcasting is this realization that people like to have conversations that are over an hour. You know?
yes, I think the desire to want to connect is there for most people, even some introverts and recluse types. But is there time? Is there desire? Uh, is there a barrier within your brain thinking that maybe I don't want to be judged too harshly by who I'm about to talk to at length and reveal things to?
Yeah.
Is there a part of me that's unwilling to open up? Like I had referenced earlier, I'm not really big on talking about my feelings. I
Right.
have them, um, and sometimes they're very strong, but it takes either a strong trust or a strong situation for them to like really come out. And when they do, I'm uncomfortable because
Right.
it's a weak function of mine. So on the flip side, I think some people perceive a short conversation as that person doesn't want to talk to me. But that might not be the case. It might just be that person's not talkative. Maybe you guys are different personality types. Maybe they're in a hurry. Um, so I think it's important to stay open-minded and not jump to conclusions as to why someone might be brief with you, or uh, I might have a conversation with someone and realize that we're very different people, or people might listen to this podcast and say, what these guys are talking about or what I'm talking about is what the fuck are they talking about? But that doesn't mean that um, we can't respect each other in a way. We can't accept that we are different people, and that's okay. Like we can still occupy the same space. We can still appreciate things about each other, but we don't have to be best friends.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's the thing too. It's just like, are we just types of people that like this sort of conversation? And
yes, I know I am a minority in terms of uh, what I know in the MBTI system is that, or what I've heard many times, is that 70% of the population are sensing types, 30% or maybe even 25%. I've heard 75-25. I've heard 70-30. The lower 25 to 30% of the total world's population is intuitive leading, meaning one of their top functions, one of their two top cognitive functions is intuition. I know I had Pondi do a personality test, and I believe he's an ENFP, which means he's an extroverted intuitive. And I think that that's why him and I get along so well and have good conversations. We're not the same type. He's more of a feeler than me. He's more of an extroverted personality, but we appreciate each other in terms of how we can perceive things,
Right.
And just, I think you are also that way, because we can talk about something and then go off in a different path and then come back to that same something and connect it. Whereas sensors may be, when we go off the path from the original topic, they're like, what, how the fuck did we get here?
Mm-hmm.
And we may be like, how the fuck did we get here? But we will eventually realize, oh yeah, that's where we started, and we can get back to that point a little more easily than sensing types. So I've recognized through my research, through my observations about and my reflections, that I do oftentimes get a sense that who I'm talking to, they don't give a shit about what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
They stop listening, and therefore I oftentimes stop talking as much to that person, because I've recognized that they don't care. And I
That's
don't
true.
take offense to it. It's just
Right.
we're different, and that's okay.
Right. Right.
That's life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny thinking about your and Ponti's relationship, because I know that you guys are like very good friends, but I feel like I haven't been a witness to your personal conversations ever. It's like what you have is a very unique uh, combination of personality, and I like that idea that like it's something totally different. Who you are together is something totally different than you both as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a cool thing. I mean, I think maybe some people, maybe that's like if people are listening to this, it's just like, oh, that's how Kenny and Richard talk to one another. Like,
Yeah, you and I have
you
had
know,
many. When it's like you and uh, I know personally that when it's when it's 1v1, 1-on-1, or a small group, I tend to be a little bit more outgoing. When there's a bunch of people talking, I tend to sit back and just observe,
right?
and kind of, I'll put a little thing in here and there, but I'm not one to dominate a group conversation.
Yeah,
Um, you and I don't necessarily agree on everything, um, but I think that we're open to listening. And Pondi and I certainly don't agree on everything. We've had plenty of disagreements and debates, but I see value in that, because a different perspective can make me understand something better, where a lot of people will not want to talk to someone who disagrees with them because it's going to hurt their feelings, it's going to offend them, and therefore they never get to really be exposed to a different idea to either break down their current belief or
right.
bolster their current belief, because they're never willing to have the conversation, because they don't want to have those ill feelings, those, I don't want to disagree. There's times where even I'm having a conversation with someone and I could tell you're uncomfortable with the situation, even though you're not part of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell that you're a little bit like, guys, like, and I don't see it that way. I see it like, I might sound passionate, I might be loud, but I'm not mad. I'm
Yeah, no, I know
I
what you're
like
talking about.
I
There's
like
like,
arguments. I'm a devil's advocate sort of guy.
right, right. No, it's kind of funny. It's just like being like the party host and like the party host personality, where it's like you want to make sure everything's like everyone's getting along,
Right.
no one's ruffling feathers.
I respect that. People need that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the, was it ENJT? It's like the leader one. Now, this is something that I don't think I've always identified as, but like in all my recent test taking of the personalities, it's like the
ENTJ.
ENTJ, yeah. And it's like,
I think Mark Killick's an ENTJ, and I'm pretty sure that
I think,
ENTJs and INTPs get along well as well.
yeah, and it's like I definitely think about the system, and it's like I'm always thinking about like the fluidity of the system. I want to make things work, and I want to make things progress, um, and I want people to have a good time. And I remember my mom would always talk about her father, who I like never knew, but she'd always just describe him as like kind of the life of the party. Like he always wanted to be inclusive and would do a bunch of like party games in order to make people feel welcome. And like the admiration she talked about of her dad, it's like something that when she first started sharing these things, like I was nowhere near as confident or comfortable with myself as I am now. And as I come into my own, it's like realizing that maybe I am that person. Like maybe I can have those abilities to bring people together is like a uh, really cool thing in terms of like, heritage and playing out somebody's memory kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're maturing and you're recognizing through reflection and experience that, um, like, personality psychology, I think, is great. I think certain types are more likely to look into it, and
Right. That's interesting too.
and once you recognize, like, let's say what you are, what type you are, you can start to reflect on past experience or present experiences and how you think and how you deal with situations. And once you have a better understanding of who you are, you can, um, work on your weaknesses, you can work on your strengths, you can, find like-minded people to, uh, you know build things with. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't really know where I'm going with this.
Okay, I'm gonna maybe in trying to find some sort of summary of this and bringing it back to why we are friends. Like, this is something I think about, and I alluded to that seventh and eighth grade team last year that had like this kind of perfect combination of personalities. I feel in soccer on the field. Do you feel like there is do you feel like there's a association with position and natural personality type or personal and or tendencies that make somebody a natural for a certain position, or do you feel somebody can be trained to play every position, or is it something maybe more in terms of like body uh, stature and stuff like that?
I've had these thoughts too. I think, generally speaking, most people think, bigger, taller center back, smaller, faster winger. Um,
Right.
I have actually looked up what, uh, I like to guess kind of certain people what certain people's personality types are, and I have looked up soccer players, like, hey, what type is Messi? Based on my knowledge, what I know about my type, for example, INTP, is that we are analyzers, we are pattern recognizers. It's hard for people to lie to us because we spot inconsistencies very fast. And I have thought, does my personality type make me a better soccer player because of my pattern recognition, because of how I can analyze things from so many different perspectives? Um, there's um there's a neuroscience neuroscientist. I think his name's Dario Nardi. I think, where am I going with this? Transcontextual thinking is the term I think he's coined, where basically tons of parts of your brain light up, which I think signifies the fact that INTPs can consider so many things at once. I think that makes me a better soccer player. So I do think that to an extent, always your cognitive ability in whatever you do has a bearing on your success or lack thereof. If you can't think fast, I don't think you could be a good soccer player. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I do think that
You didn't at all. You didn't answer it one bit.
I think personality does play a part in perhaps the potential for success in certain areas of the field. You know,
Yeah, I mean, you always hear about goalkeepers being like the sort
crazy.
of off the wall. Yeah, like, and I mean, does Fabio match that? Does Mike match that? Does Juan match that? I don't know. I think Fabio does.
Well, you can also say that some people want to play a position that they might not actually be suited for.
Right.
And some people are in a position that suits them. Can we connect that to personality type? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field, and I don't think it's an exact science. But
Do you
I
see
do
it?
think,
Do you see it as a coach at all?
as a high
Do you,
school coach, I
and do you
have.
consider those things? Like,
Oh yeah. Yes, I don't know everyone's personality type or cognitive ability, but I can only assume based on how I see them play.
and maybe we kind of stray away from the idea of personality type in this sense, but in term more thinking about in personality. What sort of a person is this, and what position does that? Uh,
In soccer, I really just look at their skill and I guess their mentality as much as I can evaluate that. Um, are they calm? You know, more of the calm, um, good touch, good vision sort of players I want to put in the middle of the field. More fast players I want to put wide. Um, More selfish players I want to put up front.
right. Yeah.
Um, you know, the old stereotype of, you know, maybe the fatter kid goes in the back, or who doesn't have like the great range of passing but is strong and fast, put him in the back.
Mm-hmm.
um, but my goal as a coach is always to try to teach them to be a total footballer. Good first touch, good range of passing. Even from the goalie, I want everyone to be comfortable on the ball, because the way that you move the ball in the game is passing. And if
Right.
you're not comfortable with both feet, your touch is bad, you're not going to be good anywhere you go.
Yeah, I was saying to my students where it's like so many of these kids just they don't exude confidence, and so no one's going to have confidence in them, right? And it's like how do you show that you're confident in order to entrust a person to pass to you? And then how do you set yourself up for that success when the ball is passed to you? And it, you know, at a little lower level, it's gonna be more simplified, where it's like, do you have time for a one touch or two touch? And you need to know your options. And if you're not ready at every time, like, no one's gonna pass back to you, and you're never gonna be involved in the game. And that's like, you kind of have to at some point recognize that you're not communicating your confidence, you know, like.
First, I'll say I've had low confidence one time in terms of playing soccer, and it was a horrible feeling. Um, it was a short bout of low confidence where I felt like no matter what decision I made on the field, I was like fucking up.
Right.
it was horrible feeling. For kids your age, I would say you build on the fundamentals. Once they get the fundamentals, then you can start teaching the whys and the hows, because
Right.
the
Yeah.
game moves fast, and it's not about you all the time. It's about the next step and the next step and the next step. Um,
Which is kind of the crazy thing at this level, because we have, we've maybe practiced 10 times, and it's not enough to teach fundamentals to kids that don't have them. And the strategies in game are so specific to what we're going to encounter, where it's like the opponents are going to have 3 or 4 strong players, and to reduce the effectiveness of those players, you can like put in these very strange strategies that can be effective in a period of 50 minutes, which is what we play, in order to get the result that you need. Where it's like you could man mark 4 players with 4 guys that are non-essential, and don't let them get the ball, sort of thing, where it's like you can play these funny kind of tricks to the game that don't resemble soccer at all. You know?
what's your goal? I mean, the goal is always to win, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's not pretty sometimes. I'd rather focus on teaching my team to do the right things than trying to adapt to another team. Now, within a game, I
Right.
can I can maybe recognize things that the other team's doing and try to inform my team of this, but not stray too far from what our game is, because um, there's not enough time in a season, especially for you. It sounds like, to teach various tactics, various formations, um, and feel confident changing your formation or changing your approach to the game with these high school boys. And another thought I had is, I, if what I've heard is true, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is the last to develop in boys, in young people. That's the decision-making part of the brain. Should I lower my standards for these young people in how I expect them to play the game and the decision-making, based on the fact that their decision-making part of the brain is not developed yet because of their age?
Mm-hmm.
I have considered that, but I'm not one to lower my standards. I'm still going to keep them high, because if you keep your expectations high, people are more likely to move up towards that than if you keep it low and they meet it. Then it's like, oh, I'm good enough. And,
Sure.
and none of us are good enough.
Yeah, it's crazy thinking about that prefrontal cortex maturing at what, 25 for males. And it's like thinking about these professional players like Jude Bellingham or Trent Alexander-Arnold, who are considered mature at like a 20-year-old age. And it's like, well, maybe they might still hit sort of like a crisis mode that just is sort of like, I don't know. Um, what's it called? Delayed. I don't know. I think about some of these players who have just been put into these high pressure situations. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold was kind of this case, where it's like he's considered mature by all observers and by all pundits, but that sort of like grind so early on is going to wear on you, and it's going to catch up to you, and it's going to result in performance breakdown, and like um, not that he's not still achieving great things. It kind of took a different positional aspect to it, but um, I don't know.
Well,
Sometimes these professional players, it's like the scrutiny they're under is so unrealistic, and
yeah,
everybody just sounds like idiots when they are treating them like meat. And
right. Like
yeah,
robots, and they're sitting on the couch drinking their beer, thinking they know better. And
right,
I mean, that's another factor of being a player at any level, but the professional level, having the mental strength to deal with making mistakes, to deal with articles being written about you, headlines being negative about you. Do you read them and say fuck you? Do you not look because you want to focus on your game? It's not just skill, because skill is everywhere. We have tons
Right.
of skill everywhere. It is what you do with the skill, your consistency of decision making, and your mentality.
Right.
I'm probably missing some things, but again, the general observer is going to look at performance alone or skill alone and not consider, let's say, the in between the lines sort of things that affect us as humans in general, but as players specifically, the pressures of performing, the pressures of um, staying in the starting lineup, uh, being judged
This,
all the time, and
yeah, this is a concept that maybe I shared with you before again, because we've had a lot of conversations of this nature, but it's something that somebody made this analogy and it always stuck with me as like, if you are analyzing a season or a team or a group of players and a coach in terms of their travel log, like in terms of their records of wins and losses and um, statistics like shots on goal and all that stuff. Like that's if you were to look at like a ship's log back in the early days of voyaging across the ocean, and a log of just like these statistics, these facts. That is very
tangibles.
different from a journal. A journal written by the master and commander. I'm taking a one from that movie, but like an actual journal of experience, and a journal of experience written by the players, the coaches, of them having home lives, of acclimating to new environments, of having a child who's 4 years old, or a coach. I think of Mourinho all the time about having like a teenage girl when he's in Manchester and he has to transport his family, and how stressful that must have been. And you think about like people who are going through surgeries like that, and Conti had that kidney surgery last year. It's like, how can you can you quantify the impact that these personal experiences have on your output as a professional? And all these things that are unwritten and private that nobody can comment on.
Mm.
Uh, it's like these are the things that really matter, I think, because I think about my own experience. Like if I was to look at my winning 11 career as a professional career, like the things that are creating a change in my performance are exclusively personal, you know. Um, they're not they're not because I was discouraged on the field. It's because I was discouraged at home, or because I was busy here, all these things. So,
I feel you completely. This is why I don't chime in too much on the footy fellas talks of criticizing. Um, like I can talk in terms of a player myself, but oftentimes I think people think they know the locker room
right,
uh, happenings, the chemistry of the team, the thoughts of the manager. Like you're not at practice every day. You're not in the locker room. You don't know what the team's goal is necessarily, or what like you referenced what the people are going through. Just because they're professionals, it doesn't make them not human. Just because they make millions and millions and millions of dollars doesn't make them not human. Um, this is like I get where, oh, you're getting paid this much, shut up and play. I get that mentality, but I also get that's a human. They're not a robot. They're going to get injured. They're going to be lacking confidence, just like your junior high players at times. And if you don't consider those things, then I don't even want to have a conversation with you about it. That's just, yeah, that's,
Yeah, and I feel, and it's weird too, talking to like traditionalists too, because I feel like there's this concept that before things became hyper scrutinized in the media, these players just had more resolve or more like grit, and they wouldn't make a big deal out of things. Like, they were just tougher back then, you know, like they wouldn't they wouldn't allow the media to impact their play. But like, it's, you can't just like imagine things in a vacuum. Like, we are of this society that we're in, and these players are under intense scrutiny. Like, this, all this stuff about Pogba coming out with the blood testing, I'm sure you've kind of heard. He's like, he's failed some drug tests and everything. And it's just like thinking about the scrutiny that Pogba's been under for the last, 7 years since he joined Juventus and then Manchester, and thinking about his decision making of like being under such pressure, like to the point where he takes, you know, performance enhancing drugs in order to get the results that people expect of him, kind of thing. Like, that to me is a tragic occurrence, because it's brought on by so many different factors. Is it his fault? It's like, it's not really for us to make that decision.
it's an unrealistic societal expectation that if you are weak-minded, you will succumb to. Um, that's sort of a stoic philosophy as well. It's like, can you drain out the critics? Can you just focus on what you're trying to accomplish? But to a certain extent, I understand that he wants to keep up. He wants to stay relevant. If the demands of the society is so strong and everyone believes it, you've got to kind of submit to that if you want to keep your place in that position that you've got to. And this is where, like, being famous in general, an actor or a musician or an athlete, a lot of times people think that they want to do that, but oftentimes they don't know what they go through in order to maintain that title of professional or musician. And is all of the alcoholism and drug use of, let's say, musicians or actors, or let's say Pogba taking whatever performance enhancing drugs, is that a result of the pressure, the unrealistic societal pressure on these people who are people but are seen as more than people? They are idols, they are heroes, they are legends, they are just scrutinized way more than they may deserve to be.
Well,
And it's a tough question. I don't expect you to answer it, but
as I squirm in my seat, I feel like the recording might need to come to a natural halt in my kidney. What was it? Kidney capacity?
yeah, I got a P2. But this might be long enough for 2 parts. So I mean,
Oh, well,
if anybody gets through this podcast, God bless them.
the first part's going to naturally be an hour, because that was the first recording, and then the second part is looking at 2 hours and 3 minutes. So it's going to be a haul for my computer to just process this tomorrow. So
We'll see it next week.
we're going to look at that view count. It's going to be 1. We're going to wonder who was listening to us ramble on. No, I love this stuff. I actually like the Jez conversation. For some reason, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to listen back to this one. And then when I did, it was like, I really enjoyed that. It's
He's such a jolly, lovely, lovable guy.
As are you. You are a big Kenny Bear.
I'm not jolly. I'll say that. I'm thoughtful, but I'm not jolly.
No one wants you to be jolly. The world would be off kilter if you were jolly.
Yeah, I've got to keep you guys in check and tell you how it is sometimes.
I could be like a Halloween costume, Jolly Kenny. All right. Well,
I'll
I
have to
really,
put a little marker here because I can't smile too long.
That's Joker Kenny. All right, I'm squirming so bad.
Yeah.
Kenny, honestly, that was, I don't even know what we talked about, but that was extremely enjoyable. It really felt like we were just kind of side by side talking. So
Yeah, it's not something I usually do, but I enjoyed it too. Wait, you're recording the call? What the fuck? Just noticed it.
All right, I'm gonna end the call. So there's gonna be no. We'll probably chat on WhatsApp afterwards. But this pee is imminent, and I can't hold it any longer. Kenny, I love you.
But love you too.
Have a good night, man.
Yep. Talk to you soon. See you Sunday.
Peace.
Later.